we heard from Chris Stark. He thinks that Keir Starmer should be bolder. We know you junked your £28 billion a year spending. He's right that Labour's gone back on its ambition, isn't he?
Especially when it's the most popular policy in the Labour manifesto. Every time it was polled by like Luke Trill from More in Common, everybody found that apart from the New Deal for Working People, the £28 billion climate investment pledge, broadly, wildly popular. Again, why the fact we're having this discussion on this very programme about the idea that politicians are kind of stepping back from their climate commitments for no reason, when every time it's polled within the public, they show broad support for it, and yet they still junk their policies anyway. It's madness. And we still have discussions on here as if the public don't support it. No discussion of public support, only in terms of political will.
No, absolutely not. When we go into the next general election, our promise on clean energy by 2030, making Britain a clean energy superpower, setting up GB Energy, headquartered in Scotland, to invest in renewables, that will be by far and away our biggest spending commitment going into that election campaign. It presents a huge difference and change in approach between us and the current Tory government, who presided over, frankly, a failure when it comes to our energy security. So it's a big commitment that we're making. As you said, Keir has been out and about with Ed, with Rachel, talking about how we upgrade our ports. So this is an area that we care about. We've got strong policy in this area. And if we are elected and we get to clean energy by 2030, that is a game-changing moment for this country.
But the problem is you've still got the ambition, but you're going to spend a lot less. So that is clear. You have massively decreased the amount of money that you have committed to doing all of that. So it's not credible, is it, to make the same...
True, literally true. They said, we'll need to spend this money to reach this target. What happens if we spend like 20% of what we were going to spend, which is how much they've cut back by? And then they say, oh, well, we just have the same ambition. Again, all ambition, no method.
Promise without the same price tag.
No, look, we've had to recalibrate our plans given what is the likely economic inheritance that this government will leave for whoever is in the next government. So
inflation is back down at 3%. Bond yields are coming down. Interest rates are scheduled to come down by the time the election is going to get called. All of this, we can't do anything because of Liz Truss nonsense. All of it's untrue. It's just a flat out lie. You're lying to the public.
We've had to do that. We obviously want to make sure that everything we put forward is credible. Fiscal responsibility is the absolute basis for all of our plans, and we have to make sure that any borrowing that occurs is within our own fiscal rules. So we have had to scale back, but that doesn't stop us.
Bingo, chat. You mentioned the fiscal rules. Again, just this nonsense fiscal rule of having to have debt to GDP falling over the end of the 5-year period. Pointless, waste of breath. All it's doing is stopping us from actually creating this decade of national renewal that they say they want to do, but they have no plans to actually implement in terms of policy. We would like to do the good things, but unfortunately, we have made up this rule, because there's no such thing as a fiscal rule. A fiscal rule is a nonsense. They don't exist. They're just things that hamstring people from doing things that the public want them to do, and justifying it as being good governance. Again, I will say it time and time again on this channel, but I'm going to hammer it into everybody who watches this video, that fiscal responsibility is not when you don't spend money. Fiscal responsibility is spending the right amount of money on good things, which is what we've not done for 14 years. We've not spent any money on anything and been told that it was fiscal responsibility. Where has it left us? Low investment, low productivity, low growth, managed decline. And Labour saying, well, we can't change from this. We can't do anything other than more austerity because of all the austerity. It just continues the doom loop forever.
From having an incredibly ambitious plan to get to clean power by 2030. We can do that within the commitments that we have made. We've laid out the detail of our spending plans there, what will come from the windfall tax, what will come from recalibrated plans on borrowing, but some borrowing all the same, to make sure that we can have clean energy and be secure and get our bills down by 2030.
But you are, by your own admission, scaling back. And it's also the case that when you promise, as you have this morning, when Keir Starmer promises, as he does a lot, that you'll have clean power by 2030, it is also the case, it's highly likely that fossil fuels will still have to be part of that, isn't it?
Well, there's two things. Firstly, on how it's paid for, we know that it has always been the case, and all of the experts and all of the modelling in this area shows that most of the money for getting to clean energy by 2030 is actually going to come from private investment. And what businesses need is certainty from a government that is committed.
Again, their entire platform involves, we reckon, right? We reckon that we can get private investment. even though we can't crowd them in anymore because we've massively cut back the investment that we're promising. So actually, the likelihood of investment coming from the private sector is now way lower because the commitments for the stability for the future of investment coming from the state to crowd that investment in, as Mariana Mazzucato talks about in all of the work that she's done about the entrepreneurial state, to be able to get private investment to have the understanding that they will be able to get this agreement for this kind of public-private partnership, which is what GB Energy is supposed to be. Investment for future public-private partnerships, not a homegrown, publicly owned energy company, but essentially an investment fund, which is like fine. It's not great, it's not what I would want, but it's fine. But under the premise, under the economic model that they've been taught by Mazzucato, who advised them before she sacked them off because they weren't actually doing any of her actual recommendations, this doesn't make any sense. They are actually not just scaling back the public investment, but by doing that, they're also making sure that less private investment comes in as well. This makes no sense whatsoever. This is garbled nonsense. Absolute total nonsense that they're talking about here.
To this agenda that has a proper plan to make it a reality, and that is the difference between us and the Tory party, because they've been talking a good game on rhetoric and then having an existential crisis about whether they believe in this or not.
About their
but
plans.
We have proper plans to make it real.
But how is it realistic, Shabana Mahmood, that when you're going to spend less money, and at the moment it takes on average 13 years to get a wind farm connected to the electricity grid, if you are lucky enough to get into power in the autumn 2024, you'd have 5 years to have a complete transformation, spending less cash to make it happen. It's not realistic, is it?
No, look, independent experts have looked at our plans to get to clean power by 2030 and said it is doable. We will have to work at pace. There is no doubt that this is going to be a challenging mission that we have set for ourselves, but we're not prepared to just sit back and think we're in a bit of a doom loop here and it seems like it's all pretty hopeless and we can do nothing. Government can achieve huge things in this area if it has the political will to do so, if it makes some money available, but also if it takes the steps to unlock private sector investment, which
you're not doing. You scaling back your investment is also scaling back the private investment that you can guarantee alongside it. The whole point of a public-private partnership is you guarantee sustainability and security for the private investors that you are partnering with in your public-private partnership. Again, not my preferred model of running an economy. I want total public ownership of things like our basic utilities that we use, but fine, you want to do a public-private partnership model, go for it. It's better than no investment that we're getting from the Tories. But you cannot come to me on my fucking programme and come and tell me that we expect to get just all of the private investment we need to get to 2030 when under your own model, there's going to be less of their own investment because you've also cut back. You are not de-risking capital to unlock that private investment by cutting back your own investment at the same time. You're creating more risk for capital, which makes their private investment even less likely. This is nonsense.
Will provide all of the money taken together in order to get to clean energy by 2030. And that is so necessary if we're going to be energy independent and not reliant on dictators abroad and get our bills down as well.
And you've said again, clean energy by 2030, but do you acknowledge, in fact, as Keir Starmer did when he spoke to us when this was originally announced in 2022, that fossil fuels might still be there as a fallback?
There is always going to have to be a strategic gas reserve for when when wind and sun are not available. In the definition of what clean power looks like, that always includes a strategic reserve.
So your promise that you make time and again to the public of clean energy, clean green energy,
we will be
is
able
not
to be energy
really
self-sufficient by 2030 with the investment in renewables, but also in the new technologies around carbon capture, storage and hydrogen. It's a whole system change, but you do need a reserve. You do need a reserve. That has always been the case. That has always been our policy position. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't go much further and faster, that you can't double onshore wind, that you can't triple solar as we plan to do, and that you can't quadruple offshore wind in order to get us to energy security by 2030.
And I think actually what I will do is I will actually defend Labour on this one. This attack from Laura is stupid. Oh, you say you want net zero by 2030, but you might have to have some fallback on there being some amount of fossil fuels. Yeah, whatever. Like, that's fine. Having like a backup way of ensuring that you have some kind of power security, it's not a problem. Like, we just need to ensure that we have way more investment in green technology and renewable energy that we need to. Like, net zero as a goal is something that I broadly agree with, but really and truly, it's a goal to ensure that we maximise the political will for investment in renewable energy. If we have like a couple of oil power plants, whatever it is, like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not that fussed. But we need the jobs, we need the investment, we need to decarbonise as fast as possible. Having some there as a backup is like not a problem. Like, this line of questioning is really silly from Laura Koonsberg here. But of course, carbon capture and storage is obviously like a massive, gigantic boondoggle. And it's just essentially their way of trying to use funny buzzwords to try and con the public into thinking they have more of a plan than they do.
2030.
But that's a really important point that you've made there, because our viewers are going to hear time and time again Labour politicians like you and Keir Starmer saying clean green power by 2030. You've just acknowledged there that will require fossil fuels as a fallback. And thank you for clarifying that today. That doesn't mean that you're not...
It is a completely normal thing to have a strategic reserve. Of course, we need a strategic reserve on gas, but that does not stop us from producing more of our energy through clean sources and investing in the technology that will enable more system-wide change as we move beyond 2030 as well.
Okay, you've made that clear. Thank you.
Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.